Her tiny scar was worth more than every diamond in that ballroom. And the man who owed her his heartbeat was about to find out just how far he'd go to keep her alive twice. Some men in this city bury their debts. Jae Sun-woo hunted for 6 years to repay his. If you believe loyalty and gratitude should outlast fear and money, hit subscribe and drop a like. Because the ones staying quiet right now, they're the same ones who'd let a hero disappear unpaid. Maya Reyes had scrubbed floors in 3 different countries, but nothing prepared her for the specific humiliation of kneeling in a $6,000 made of borrowed fabric, a spare hotel uniform jacket she'd cinched at the waist because laundry hadn't returned her real one in time, picking up a shattered champagne flute while Seoul's elite watched like she'd committed a felony against etiquette. The Hanam Grand's charity gala glittered above her, all crystal and old money, and Maya was somewhere beneath it, invisible in the way service staff are trained to be invisible, until she wasn't. Watch where you're going. The voice was quiet. That was the terrifying part. Men who yelled, Maya could handle. She'd managed drunk uncles and screaming toddlers and one memorable ER patient who tried to bite her. But this voice didn't need volume. It had the kind of stillness that made a room rearrange itself around it. She looked up. Pale skin, sharp black suit, eyes the color of a closed door. Jae Sun-woo only recognized the particular gravity of him, the way 6 men in dark suits had gone rigid at their posts the second his shoulder brushed her tray, the way conversation near them had simply stopped, like someone had hit mute on the whole ballroom. I'm so sorry, sir. I'll clean it right up. That was when her sleeve slipped. She'd stopped thinking about the scar years ago. It had faded into a thin silver seam along her side. The kind of thing she only noticed in the shower, a signature her body kept from a surgery she barely remembered the specifics of, only the exhaustion after, and the strange peace of knowing she'd done something that mattered. She reached for the broken glass, and her sleeve rode up an inch, and Jae Sun-woo, a man who had reportedly watched 2 business partners get carried out of meetings on stretchers without blinking, went white. Where? He said, and his voice cracked. Actually cracked, like something old and expensive giving way under pressure. Did you get that scar? Maya froze mid-reach. Every instinct she owned, sharpened over years of triage nursing, screamed that something enormous had just shifted in the room, though she couldn't name what. Excuse me? He didn't answer. He was staring at her side the way a man stares at a ghost he'd spent years hunting and finally, impossibly, cornered in a hotel ballroom over a broken champagne glass. One of his guards took a step forward, hand twitching toward his jacket, and Sun-woo raised 2 fingers without even looking. The guard stopped like he'd hit glass. Everyone out, Sun-woo said. Not loud. He never needed loud. Now. 300 of Seoul's wealthiest people evacuated a ballroom in under 4 minutes. Maya would later think that was the single most impressive display of raw power she'd ever witnessed, more than the guards, more than the suit, more than the way the hotel manager had practically bowed on his way out backward. Then it was just the 2 of them, a broken glass, and a question she still hadn't answered. It's a surgical scar, she said carefully, because whatever this was, lying felt like the wrong move. Liver donation, 6 years ago. Confidential, anonymous. I don't even know who. Daehan Medical Center, Sun-woo said. It wasn't a question. October. You were 23. You didn't ask for money. You didn't ask for a name. His hands, she noticed, were shaking. And this was a man whose hands, she suspected, did not shake. I've spent 6 years and more money than you'll see in a lifetime trying to find you. And you've been mopping the floor beneath my penthouse suite for 8 months. The room tilted. Maya gripped the edge of a linen-draped table, glass forgotten. I was the patient. He said it like a confession, like the words cost him something. I was dying, and half the people who wanted me dead were the reason I was dying. And you gave me a piece of yourself without asking who I was or what I'd done to deserve dying on that table. I need you to understand something, miss. Rise. Maya Reyes. Maya Reyes. His composure was returning now, sliding back over him like armor. But his eyes hadn't stopped looking at her the way you look at proof that miracles occasionally show their work. There are people in this city who would kill to erase every trace of that surgery ever happening. And as of tonight, you are the last one they haven't found. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed in the one-room apartment she shared with her 17-year-old brother, Diego, replaying the ballroom over and over, trying to make the math work. Nurse. Mop. Mafia. None of the equations balanced. Diego found her still awake at 6 a.m., staring at the wall like it owed her an explanation. You look like you saw a ghost, he said, pouring cereal into a bowl that had seen better decades. Close enough, Maya muttered. She didn't tell him the truth. What was she supposed to say? The scariest man in Seoul turned out to be the guy she gave a piece of her liver to, and now he thinks she's in danger. Diego had enough to worry about with his asthma inhalers and a scholarship application due in 3 weeks. She wasn't about to hand him a Mafia subplot on top of it. She went to work anyway, habit mostly, and the stubborn refusal to let one surreal conversation reroute her entire life. But the hotel felt different that morning, subtly wrong, like a photograph slightly out of focus. 2 new guests lingered near the service elevator, dressed too well for men doing nothing, watching the hallway with the practiced boredom of people paid to look bored. When Maya clocked in, the front desk manager, a nervous man named Officer Cho, no relation to any actual police officer, a joke that had followed him for years, wouldn't meet her eyes. "You've been reassigned," he said. "West Wing effective immediately." "Nobody told me that." "It's already done." He slid a new badge across the counter. "Laminate still warm from the machine. Take it, don't ask." Maya took it, mostly because arguing with a nervous man wasn't going to fix whatever was happening around her like weather. By the time her shift ended, she understood the reassignment. The West Wing was quieter, better lit, farther from public eyes, and she realized with a jolt, 1 floor beneath what the staff called, in hushed tones, the owner's suite. She'd cleaned that hallway for 8 months without once wondering who paid for a floor nobody was allowed on. Now she knew. The real trouble started walking home. She noticed the car 3 blocks from her building. Black, unremarkable, parked at an angle that suggested someone wasn't planning to leave soon. She noticed it because 5 years of ER work had trained her to notice things that didn't belong. A bruise shaped wrong, a story that didn't add up, a car that idled a little too patiently on a street where nobody idled. She quickened her pace. The car didn't move. She told herself she was being paranoid, that Sunwoo's revelation had rewired her nerves into seeing danger in every parked sedan in Seoul. Then she reached her building and found the door to her apartment standing open. Not broken, open carefully. Precisely the way someone opens a door when they don't want you to know they were ever there. Except they clearly hadn't cared, because the moment she stepped inside, she saw it. Drawers pulled out and left hanging. The mattress shifted an inch off its frame. Her nursing certificates, the only proof of the life she used to have, fanned across the floor like someone had been looking for something specific and hadn't found it. Diego. Her voice came out thin. He wasn't home. School, she told herself. He's at school. It's 3 p.m. He's fine. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Your brother is safe. For now. Stop asking questions about the man from the gala, and he stays that way. Maya's hands went cold in a way that had nothing to do with Seoul's autumn air. She'd spent years learning how to stay calm in emergencies. Codes called overhead, patients crashing, chaos. She was trained to metabolize into competence. None of that training covered this. The specific surgical terror of a threat aimed at the one person she'd sacrificed everything to protect. She was still standing frozen in her ransacked apartment when a second text arrived. This one from a number she recognized. Sunwoo's, given to her the night before with the flat instruction call, "If anything feels wrong." "I know," it read. "I'm already outside. Don't be afraid of the car in the driveway. Be afraid of the one that isn't there anymore." Maya looked out her window. The black sedan from 3 blocks away was gone. Sunwoo was waiting in the lobby of her building when she came downstairs. And for a man who supposedly ran half of Seoul's underworld, he looked remarkably like someone who hadn't slept either. His tie was loosened. His usual stillness had a crack in it now, something closer to urgency than composure. "Where's Diego?" he asked before she could speak. "School. I need to get him now." "Already handled. 2 of my people are outside his classroom. He's safe." He's confused, and he thinks they're plainclothes security hired by the hotel for a VIP incident. Sunwoo's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Almost. Not entirely a lie. Maya's fear curdled fast into something sharper. "You had people watching my apartment before it got ransacked." "I had people watching you. As of last night, that was the only decision I made that mattered." He said it plainly, no apology in it. And somehow that honesty landed harder than an apology would have. "I told you there were people who'd want to erase every trace of that surgery. I didn't expect them to move this fast. That's my mistake, and I intend to fix it." "Fix it how? You going to threaten someone in a nice suit?" "If that's what it takes." He wasn't joking. She should have been terrified of a man who said things like that without blinking. Instead, standing in her building's dingy lobby with her nursing certificates still scattered across her apartment floor upstairs, she found herself oddly grateful for a person whose first instinct was violence in her defense rather than caution in his own. "Who are they?" she asked. "You said someone wants to erase the surgery. Erase it from what?" Sunwoo's jaw tightened. 6 years ago, I wasn't dying from illness. I was dying because someone inside my own organization tried to kill me. Poison disguised as a heart condition, subtle enough that even my doctors were fooled until my liver started failing. Whoever did it believed they'd succeeded. My survival was buried. My identity scrubbed from every hospital record that existed, because the moment word got out I was alive, round 2 would begin immediately. For 6 years, the people who tried to kill me have operated under the assumption I'm dead, letting my second-in-command run things in my place while I quietly rebuilt from the shadows. And now I'm a loose thread. You're the only thread. Everyone else who touched that operation I controlled. You I never found until last night, in a ballroom, over broken glass. He exhaled, and for a second the ruthless boss disappeared entirely, replaced by something rawer. I spent 6 years searching for the woman who saved my life so I could thank her. I never once considered that finding you might put you in more danger than staying lost ever did. Maya crossed her arms, partly from cold, mostly to keep her hands from shaking. So what happens now? I go into witness protection, move to another country, become somebody's problem for the rest of my life. No, Sunwoo said. You let me protect you the way you protected me. No conditions, no debt. Just let me. It should have been an easy no. Maya didn't do dependency. She'd built her entire adult life on the principle of never needing anyone to catch her, because nobody ever had. But there was Diego to think about, sitting in a classroom right now flanked by armed men who called themselves security. And there was the very real, very recent memory of her apartment torn apart by someone's hands. Fine, she said, but I'm not moving into some penthouse and playing kept woman while you handle things. I want to know what's happening, all of it. Something shifted in Sunwoo's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or the beginning of respect. Most people beg me for protection and ask for nothing else. I'm not most people. I gave you part of my liver without knowing your name. I think I've earned the right to know it now that half your enemies want to kill me for the crime of having a compatible blood type. For the first time since the ballroom, Sunwoo laughed. Startled, like the sound had escaped before he could stop it. No, he said. I understand completely. The safe house wasn't what Maya expected. No marble, no chandeliers, none of the ostentatious wealth she'd assumed came standard with a man like Sunwoo. It was a modest 2-story house in a quiet residential district, the kind of place with a garden gnome by the mailbox and neighbors who waved at each other over fences. Hidden in plain sight, Sunwoo explained when he caught her staring. Nobody looks for a mafia boss's safe house next to a family with a golden retriever. Diego, once he'd absorbed the situation, a process that involved considerably more profanity than Maya would have liked, took to the new arrangement with the alarming adaptability of a teenager who'd already survived worse. So my sister's basically dating a Korean Batman, he announced at dinner the first night, earning a warning look from Maya and, unexpectedly, a small smile from Sunwoo. We are not dating, Maya said flatly. Sure, Diego said, unconvinced, shoveling rice into his mouth. The days that followed settled into a strange rhythm. Sunwoo came and went at odd hours, his phone buzzing with calls he took in low, clipped Korean in other rooms, always returning with his jaw a little tighter than when he'd left. Maya, unable to simply sit and wait, waiting had never been her strong suit, began quietly cataloging what she noticed. The way Sunwoo's men referred to a man named Director Wong with a specific kind of deference that didn't match how they spoke about anyone else. The way certain names made Sunwoo's expression flatten into careful neutrality. The way, twice, she caught him staring at a photograph tucked in his wallet, an old one creased at the corners, of himself and another man, younger, laughing, arms slung over each other's shoulders like brothers. Who is that? She asked on the 4th evening, when curiosity finally beat out tact. Sunwoo's hand closed around the photo before she could see it clearly. Someone I trusted. Once. Past tense. Everyone in my life eventually becomes past tense, Miss Reyes. It's an occupational hazard. He said it lightly, but there was nothing light underneath it. That was the night the first real crack appeared in the fragile piece of the safe house. Sunwoo's phone rang past midnight, and Maya, sleepless again, heard his voice shift from irritation to something colder, more controlled, more dangerous. She crept to the top of the stairs and listened. No, Director Huang doesn't need to know her location. That information stays with me. A pause. I don't care what he says about efficiency. Loop him in on nothing beyond confirmation she's secure. Maya's stomach tightened. Whoever Director Huang was, Sunwoo didn't trust him. Not fully. Maybe not at all. And yet this was, by every account she'd gathered, his second-in-command, the man running the empire while Sunwoo had been presumed dead for 6 years. The man closest to him. The man with access to everything. She thought about the photograph in his wallet, the easy, unguarded laughter in it. She thought about how loyalty in stories like this was so often just betrayal that hadn't been caught yet. She didn't say anything the next morning. Instead, she did what she'd always done best. She watched. She waited. She asked careful questions disguised as small talk. The same technique she'd used for years to get frightened patients to admit what was actually wrong with them. How long have you known Director Huang? She asked over coffee, keeping her voice deliberately light. Sunwoo's cup paused halfway to his mouth. 16 years. We came up together. He's the reason I survived my first year in this business. A beat. He's also the only person outside my medical team who knew I'd been poisoned. The coffee cup felt suddenly heavy in Maya's hands. Sunwoo. She chose her words carefully, the way you choose words for a patient who isn't ready to hear a diagnosis but needs to anyway. Has it ever occurred to you that the man who knew about the poisoning, and the man currently running your empire in your absence, and the man you still haven't told my location to, might be the same variable in this equation? Sunwoo set his cup down with exaggerated care, the kind of stillness Maya now recognized as the loudest sound he made. He didn't answer right away. Outside, a car door closed softly in the quiet street. Too soft, too deliberate. The sound of someone trying very hard not to be heard. The car door outside turned out to belong to a neighbor retrieving groceries, which should have been a relief and instead left Maya more unsettled. Proof that her nerves had recalibrated to expect danger in every mundane sound. Sunwoo didn't sleep that night either. She found him at 3 a.m. in the safe house's small study, surrounded by folders spread across the desk like a man trying to solve a puzzle by brute force. Financial records, she realized, glancing over his shoulder. Years of them. You're auditing your own second-in-command, she said. I should have done it 6 years ago. His voice was raw with something between exhaustion and fury. I was so busy staying dead that I let him build an empire inside my empire. Every contact I had, he inherited. Every loyalty I'd earned, he redirected. I've been so careful protecting you from outside threats. I never stopped to ask whether the danger was already standing at the center of my own house. Maya sat across from him, pulling a folder toward herself without asking permission. Numbers had never been her specialty, but patterns were. Years of reading vital signs taught you to see when something in a system didn't add up, even if you couldn't name the disease yet. These transfers, she said, tapping a column of figures. They spike right before the gala, the night we met. Sunwoo leaned over, and his expression changed the way ice changes right before it cracks. Silent, then sudden. That's a payment. Offshore, routed through 4 shell accounts, timed 48 hours before you and I collided in that ballroom. He looked up at her, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes that wasn't quite fear, but stood close enough to it to be uncomfortable. Someone knew you'd be there. Someone arranged for us to meet. That's insane. Nobody could have planned that. I didn't even know I'd be working that section of the gala until that afternoon. Exactly. Sunwoo's jaw tightened, which means whoever did this has access inside the hotel's own staffing system, which means someone's been tracking me for longer than 6 years' worth of searching would suggest. Maya felt the floor of her understanding shift again, the way it had the first night. Except this time, the vertigo came with a colder, more clinical fear. Sunwoo, what if I wasn't a coincidence you found? What if I was a trap someone built for you to walk into? The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the house. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed, not the low, careful vibration of routine business, but the sharp, insistent tone he'd once told her was reserved for emergencies only. He answered without a word. Maya watched his face drain of color in real time, watched the folders on the desk become suddenly, brutally irrelevant. When? He said. Not a question anyone would want answered slowly. A pause. Which hospital? Another pause, shorter, more clipped than the first. I'm coming. Don't let anyone near him who isn't cleared by me personally. He hung up. His hand, Maya noticed, was shaking again. The same tremor from the ballroom 6 nights ago, except this time it wasn't shock. It was rage trying to disguise itself as calm and failing. Diego's school, he said. There was an incident during the fire drill 20 minutes ago. A car tried to pull him into a side street. One of my men intercepted before it went further, but he stopped himself, recalibrating the sentence into something less terrifying. And Maya hated him a little for trying to soften it, and loved that he tried anyway. Take me to him. Now. They didn't speak in the car. Maya stared out the window, cataloging every streetlight, every shadow, every possibility of who could have known Diego's schedule down to the minute a fire drill would provide the perfect 5-second window of chaos. Whoever this was, they weren't guessing. They were choreographing. At the hospital, Diego, shaken but unharmed, already complaining loudly about missing his math test, which Maya found more reassuring than any doctor's reassurance could have been. Sunwoo stood in the hallway making calls in a voice Maya had never heard from him before. Quiet, precise, and utterly without mercy. Pull every camera within 3 blocks of that school, he said. I want facial recognition on whoever was driving that car within the hour. And get me Director Huang's real-time location. Now. I don't care what meeting he's in. He hung up, turned, and found Maya watching him from the waiting room doorway, Diego asleep against her shoulder despite his protests minutes earlier. I'm done waiting to be sure, Sunwoo said quietly. Tomorrow, I find out exactly who's been playing both sides of this before they get close enough to touch either of you again. The facial recognition results came back at dawn, and Sunwoo read them standing in the safe house kitchen with the particular stillness of a man holding himself together through sheer will. Maya watched him from the doorway, coffee going cold in her hands, and didn't need to ask what the report said. His face told her before his voice did. It's Director Huang's driver, Sunwoo said. The man behind the wheel of the car that tried to take Diego. Registered, confirmed on payroll under Huang's personal security detail. He set the tablet down like it had burned him. 16 years. 16 years I trusted that man with my life, and he's been building a second empire in the shadow of the first one. Patient enough to wait 6 years for the right moment to finish what he started. Why now? Maya asked. If he's been running things smoothly for 6 years, why risk exposure trying to grab Diego? Because I started auditing accounts he thought were buried. Because you started asking questions I should have asked years ago. Sunwoo's voice had gone flat the way it did when emotion got too large to hold normally. He's not consolidating anymore. He's cleaning up loose ends before I get close enough to prove what I already know. Maya set her coffee down, steadying herself against the counter. There was a question sitting on her tongue that had nothing to do with tactics and everything to do with the sick, familiar shape of betrayal. The way people you trust most are so often the ones holding the knife closest to your back, disguised as loyalty for years before the mask finally slips. She thought of every patient she'd ever treated who'd been hurt by someone who was supposed to protect them. Every story that started with, "I never saw it coming," and ended somewhere much darker. If you've ever trusted someone completely only to discover the betrayal had been years in the making, you already know there's no version of moving on that doesn't involve confronting it head-on. Some of you watching this might be nodding right now, thinking of your own Director Huang. Comment below if you've ever had to face down a betrayal hiding behind a familiar face, because staying silent about people like that is exactly how they keep winning. So what's the plan? She asked, pulling herself back to the present. You can't just walk into his office and accuse him. He'll have contingencies. I'm not walking into his office. Sunwoo's expression hardened into something Maya hadn't seen from him before. Not the cold boss from the ballroom, not the desperate man from the hospital hallway, but something colder and older, forged in 6 years of hiding. I'm going to let him think he's still winning. I'm going to arrange a meeting under the pretense of discussing security after the incident at Diego's school. Somewhere he'll feel comfortable enough to show his hand. Somewhere isolated. That's insane. You'd be walking into a trap on purpose. I've been walking through a trap for 6 years without knowing it, Maya. At least this time I choose the location. He looked at her, and something in his gaze softened despite the steel underneath it. There's an old shipyard on the coast. Decommissioned. One of the first properties I ever acquired legitimately. Huang doesn't know I still have access to it. It's isolated enough that he'll feel safe bringing exactly the kind of people he'd need to finish this quietly. And you want to walk in there alone? I want you and Diego somewhere secure 3 states away, if I had my choice, while I handle this. That's not going to happen. Maya crossed her arms, the same posture she used with stubborn patients who refused their medication out of misplaced pride. You don't get to decide unilaterally that I sit this out after everything that's already happened to me because of it. I've been in this since the moment you looked at my scar and forgot how to breathe. Sunwoo studied her for a long moment, something complicated moving behind his eyes. Fear for her safety warring visibly with the recognition that trying to control her had never worked and wasn't about to start now. If you're there, he said finally, you follow every instruction I give without hesitation. No improvising, no noble sacrifices. I make no promises, Maya said. I already broke that rule once 6 years ago on an operating table. Don't expect consistency from me now. The shipyard smelled of salt and rust, cranes looming overhead like skeletal judges presiding over a trial that had been 6 years in the making. Sunwoo arrived first, alone by appearance, though Maya knew, because he'd finally, grudgingly, told her everything, that a dozen of his most trusted people were positioned in the shadows of the rusted containers, waiting for a signal. Director Huang arrived 20 minutes later, flanked by 4 men, his expression arranged into the same warm, avuncular mask he'd worn for 16 years of Sunwoo's trust. You wanted to talk about security, he said, spreading his hands. After what happened with the nurse's brother, I understand the concern. Do you? Sunwoo's voice carried no warmth at all. Funny thing about security footage, sir. It has a habit of remembering faces even when people would rather it forgot. The mask didn't slip immediately. That was the horror of it, Maya thought, watching from her position behind a shipping container exactly where Sunwoo had ordered her to stay. The way real betrayal so rarely announces itself with a dramatic reveal, and instead simply keeps smiling until smiling no longer serves a purpose. I don't know what you think you saw, Huang said. I think I saw a 16-year friendship built entirely on the assumption I'd stay dead. Sunwoo stepped closer, and even from a distance, Maya could see the effort it cost him to keep his voice level. I think I saw the man who poisoned me. Who let me believe for 6 years that I was hiding from outside enemies when the whole time I was hiding from you? Tell me I'm wrong. Huang's mask finally cracked, and what was underneath was worse than anger. It was relief. The exhausted relief of a man finally done pretending. You were never supposed to survive that surgery, he said. Do you know what it's like building something for 16 years only to watch it handed to you because you happen to be born with the right last name? I earned that empire. I ran it better than you ever did. Quietly, efficiently, without your sentimental weaknesses. Sentimental weaknesses like keeping my word. Like not poisoning the people who trust me. Sunwoo's hand rose, a signal, and the shadows around the shipyard came alive, his people emerging from the containers, cutting off every exit Huang's men might have used. That was when Huang's expression shifted into something desperate. And desperate men, Maya knew from years in trauma bays, were the most dangerous kind. He lunged, not at Sunwoo, but toward the container where Maya stood, close enough that he must have always known exactly where she was hiding. She didn't think. She'd stopped thinking the moment a stranger's failing liver became more important than her own safety, 6 years and 1 operating table ago, and the instinct hadn't dulled with time. She moved between Huang's blade and Sunwoo's exposed side the same way she'd once moved between a dying stranger and the end of his story, and felt the cold, bright shock of a blade catching her forearm instead of finding its intended target. The pain came a half-second later than the sound of Sunwoo's roar. And then Huang was on the ground, disarmed, pinned, Sunwoo's men closing in with the swift efficiency of people who had been waiting 6 years for exactly this outcome. You did it again, Sunwoo said, kneeling beside her, hands hovering over the shallow cut like he couldn't decide whether to press the wound or simply hold her. You threw yourself in front of danger for me again. Bad habit, Maya said through gritted teeth, watching Huang dragged away by men who would ensure he faced something far more permanent than mercy. Or so she expected. But Sunwoo surprised her. Take him to the authorities, he told his men. Alive. With every financial record we recovered. Let the world see exactly what he did. No quiet burial, no disappearing act. He built his empire on lies. Let him lose it in the light. It wasn't the vengeance the underworld expected of him. It was something better. Justice with witnesses. An empire choosing exposure over shadow for the first time in its bloody history. 3 weeks later, Maya stood beside Sunwoo at a press conference she'd never imagined attending, her arm still bandaged. Diego beaming proudly from the front row. Sunwoo spoke of transparency, of rebuilding, of a debt he could never fully repay to the woman who'd saved his life twice. Once on an operating table, once at a shipyard, both times without hesitation. She gave me a second life, he told the cameras, without ever asking who I was. I intend to spend the rest of mine making sure that decision was worth it. Maya, mop retired for good, smiled beside him. Proof that one selfless choice made in a hospital hallway 6 years ago hadn't just saved a stranger. It had rewritten a kingdom, and given her, finally, a life worth staying awake for.